Effects. They're fun. Let's talk about some effects. So what are plugin effects? What are inserted effects versus using them on aux inputs, which we kind of started with aux inputs in a way, but we've also used some plugin effects. But let's dive deeper and let's listen to some examples, of course. So I like to basically start off thinking that if you're playing a guitar, you're plugged into an amp. In this instance, you've recorded some guitar and it's coming out of your speaker, and that's what it sounds like. When you are using an inserted effect, you're putting that guitar through something, and it's going to change the sound of that guitar, and it's going to come out of the speaker. Now that is different, but let's just talk about inserted effects to start with. I have some guitar, all right? It happens to be an acoustic guitar. Now, if I come into my inserts, so similar to when we insert instruments on instrument tracks, I'm going to go ahead and go to plugin. This is a mono track, so it doesn't say multi-channel or multi-mono. It's just plugin. And I'm going to go first into the harmonic category, just because I actually want to do something weird. I'm going to talk about the air effects primarily because I'm sure that we all have those available. Some of us may have some other ones like the Black Op, the 11 light and whatnot. I'm just not 100% sure the status of the studio. 100% we all have the air distortion. Actually, 100% we all have the Sans amp PSA1. That's what I'm going to use and start with. This is kind of a stock guitar amp simulator or preamp simulator. So it already kind of gives it a little bit of grit in this preset level. I'm going to click in the factory defaults, and I'm going to actually choose a, let's go with the bright fuzz. Okay, and that's going to be, kind of makes it sound like a distorted electric guitar. It's pretty bright, so I'm going to take down some of the high-end frequencies, the treble. All right, so that is a plug-in effect. It has taken my guitar, I've put something in between the guitar and my monitoring system, in this instance, my headphones or the speakers, and that thing is a distortion. Now, I can continue with this and add other effects. We have, remember, we have 5 insert slots, and if we wanted to, and we start having fun with this, we can go up to as many as 10. And they all go in order. Once you start with an effect, you're then leading into other effects. Let's go into the modulation category. So modulation means, to move. And all of the effects in the modulation category tend to have some sort of a movement characteristic to them. And again, I'm going to stick to the air effects for the most part. Chorusing. Chorusing, you're going to always have rate, depth, and mix is going to be available on most of your effects. Let's talk about mix first. So the idea when you are inserting an effect, you are taking your signal, your clean recorded guitar, in this instance it's going through distortion and other things in the preamp, and then through this chorus. How much of that clean version, in this instance, how much of this distorted version do we want to go through the chorus and hear versus just the chorus? And I'll demonstrate how that affects. Rate is how fast we want to hear this movement, and the depth, how much of this effect, like how rich do we want to make it? Let's just hear what it sounds like in the default setting. I'll take it off. All right, so you don't hear it that well. In fact, I'm going to turn off the distortion, and I'll turn off the chorus and I'll put it in. There's the clean guitar. I needed to bring up the depth a bit to really hear it. So you can hear the movement, the wobbling. I'm going to turn up the rate. Okay, it sounds ridiculous. I would actually say probably that this guitar part is not great for chorusing. Chorusing is really nice for longer, lusher, more sustained sounds. but this is chorus nonetheless. And then mix. How much of that do we want to hear as compared to just the clean guitar? And again, down at 9%, you're hardly hearing the chorus. Okay, I'm going to change this chorus to another modulation effect called flanger. And a flanger is super common as well, and it's similar. You know, you don't see many different things. And by the way, there is factory default settings, so you can play around with those as you get going. Sync is always interesting because what sync does is it takes your session tempo into account. So any movement, for example, is going to be related to the tempo of your session, which is useful. And then you can kind of make some choices based on quarter notes or dotted notes or triplet notes and things like that. You have depth, you have feedback, which is kind of different, and mix. So feedback in this instance, we're going to check it out. We're going to play with it. So let's listen to this. Let's put our distortion back in. I think flange will sound good with chorus. All right, you can hear a difference. All right, the feedback is you can really hear that movement and almost like the overtones, the harmonics of the chord. I'm going to keep that down. All flange, all clean. All right, clean flange, distorted flange. Flanger's really known for like Barracuda by heart, if you know that song. Classic flange song. Okay, some other effects. Let's talk about delay. Delay is another really popular favorite one of mine. Anything else in the modulation category? Phaser is similar to it's a flange, so I'm not going to get into that too much. Bring it up, looks similar. You can certainly hear it, and it's super cool, so you should use it. Okay, actually I'm glad I did that. It sounds cool. Gonna go no insert now. So I still have my preamp here. Let's go into delays. All right, this is not really the best sound for it, but let's do it. All right, so delay. The thing to remember with delays is these create echoes. So let's just do that right now. Okay, actual repetitions of the sound. Every time you insert a delay, you're going to see a few very common parameters. You're going to have the delay time. You're going to have feedback, and you're going to have the mix. Delay time, the space between the echoes. Is it going to be, in this instance, because it's synced, is it going to be quarter notes? Is it going to be eighth notes? Is it going to be 16th notes or eighth note triplets or dotted eighth notes? Feedback. How long are those echoes going to go? They can go a long time, but you don't want them to go too long, or it'll start to kind of build up on itself and cause problems. Mix. How much of this original sound versus the delayed echoes? So this is really important with delays, because if I turn this all the way up, you're actually not even going to hear this first note. You're only going to hear the delays. Okay, and then all the way down, you're not going to hear any delay. It's like you don't have the effect on. All right, so that's going to be in all these delay effects. Again, you have some presets. I'm going to change this one to the stereo delay or the multi-delay. And what this is doing, it's not stereo actually. What this is doing is it actually is giving you multiple taps essentially, where you can set up one delay, a second, third, or 5 different delays on a single signal and get some pretty cool rhythmic patterns. let's check out some of these presets. Quarter note delay. Okay, so nothing too special. Crazy dots. That's pretty crazy. Shuffle. Now let's do fading. All right. So again, repeating the sound. What haven't we gotten into? Okay, so inserted effects, we've talked about harmonic effects like distortion. We've talked about modulation effects like chorus, flange, and phaser. We've talked about delays. I'm not going to get into other specific types. We've already talked about reverb. Let's just go over again the difference between inserting an effect and using an aux input. And the difference is, if you insert an effect, your track is going directly through it. And if you create an aux input track, that effect is sitting on that aux. So instead of being here, it's here. Actually, let's make sure it's the same one. We're going to do a little test. I'm going to turn that one off. I'm going to change my input to a bus. I'm going to send this thing on that bus, and I'm going to raise this up. Okay, let's raise it to 0. Now I'm going to mute this, and I'm going to bring this back in and see what it sounds like. Now, the real difference is on the inserted effect, we're using this mix knob to balance the amount of the clean signal and the delayed signal. On the aux track, we're using this fader to balance the mix between the clean version, which is now going straight. So this, the distortion is going straight to the speakers, but it's also a secondary one on this bus is going to the effects processor. And in this case, that effect is delay. So there is a difference. Let's listen to that again. So there are kind of some practical reasons, and there's some common practice here. Now, there's no rules. There are only common practices. I tend to put reverb on aux tracks for a couple reasons. One, reverb is very processor heavy. So if you have 50 tracks and you're inserting reverb on 50 tracks, you could in a much easier way, send 50 tracks to one reverb, and much more efficient, much less processor intensive. Second reason is kind of like, I actually like the sound of the aux. It gives me more control. I don't want to go and send, balance 50 mix knobs on 50 different plugins. I'd rather bring up 50 different sends and think about, okay, how much snare drum? Okay, how much tom? How much hi-hat? How much guitar? How much piano? I tend to put delays. I use delays in both ways. I use delays on aux tracks a lot. And then I also use delays inserted. Modulation effects like chorus and flanging, I tend to insert directly. EQ, I tend to insert directly. Dynamics, I tend to insert directly. So compression and EQ, which we're not going to get into, they're really different beasts. All right, so I think we've done this. What are effects plugins? They give some color to your sounds and allow you to shape them and make them sound different. We've gone over a few of them as examples. We talked about the difference between inserting them and using them on aux inputs, and hopefully that expands your creative palette.